Hello, good evening. Welcome to ITV News. This is Friday night's calendar.
And here are tonight's main stories.
Guilty. The parents who murdered their 10-month-old baby son on Christmas Day. Finley Bowden suffered more than 130 injuries, a killing that has shocked a community.
It was just a baby. How could you do that to a baby? But look at her. We weren't much older than her, really. How could you do that?
We'll have details and reaction to a distressing case. Also on the programme.
Now I am looking at what my options are in terms of finding somewhere to sleep just for tonight.
Hundreds are left homeless in Bradford after thieves steal electrical cable from a block of flats.
I threw eggs at him because that's what he deserved.
A man from York is convicted after he threw eggs at the King at last year's royal visit. And...
3, 2, 1, hop. Allumage Vulcain.
Lift off for the groundbreaking mission to Jupiter with a little help from some South Yorkshire scientists. Good evening, thanks for joining us. First tonight to the horrifying case in which a baby boy was killed by his own parents in Chesterfield. Little Finley Bowden was taken into care at birth because of child protection concerns.
But he was returned to his mum and dad a few months later. 6 weeks later, Finley was found with 130 injuries to his body and had developed sepsis and pneumonia. He died on Christmas Day in 2020.
Well, today at Derby Crown Court, his parents, Stephen Bowden and Shannon Marsden, were found guilty of murder. Phil Brewster was in court for the verdict. A horrendous and upsetting case, Phil.
Indeed, it was extremely distressing, not least for the jury who had to listen for 5 months to some of the terrible injuries inflicted on 10-month-old Finley Bowden. But after 25 hours of deliberation, they returned unanimous verdicts of guilty of murder on both Stephen Bowden and Shannon Marsden. As those verdicts were read out, the couple remained silent and impassive in the dock with their arms folded, in stark contrast to the jury and also the judge herself, who was choking back tears as she thanked the jury for their commitment and hard work. Sadly, for Finley, it was all too late. The last month and a half of his life marked by pain and misery, battered and bruised by the people who should have loved and cared for him most. A word of warning, some viewers may find some aspects of the injuries inflicted on Finley in my report upsetting. Finley Bowden was just 10 months old when he died on Christmas Day in 2020. But in the last few days and weeks of his life, he suffered unimaginable pain and distress. Taken into care when he was born, a court ruled he should be returned to his parents, Stephen Bowden and Shannon Marsden, at the family home in Chesterfield. A decision which at the time stunned neighbours like Sarah Bryan, who remembers a chaotic household, peppered with drug-taking, arguments and domestic violence.
She'd have bruises on her face. She had, I think she had a boot mark on her face, and then there was one on the door as well. She even told me and my sister when she were crying, sat at the back door, that he strangled her.
After Finley had returned to his parents, social workers and health visitors repeatedly tried to visit and inspect the family home, but were told Finley was either asleep or they couldn't come in because of COVID. When police officers eventually did get inside, they discovered a house of abject squalor, full of soiled bedsheets and dirty nappies.
The cot was filthy, it was disgusting. Around it, the evidence of cannabis use throughout the house. It wasn't suitable conditions to raise the dog, let alone a small baby.
By Christmas Eve, Finley's injuries meant his body could no longer cope. He'd developed sepsis and pneumonia. But instead of seeking urgent medical help, Stephen Bowden and Shannon Marsden took him out shopping in Chesterfield. Less than 12 hours later, and only 39 days after being returned to his parents, Finley was dead.
All the experts we spoke to, the paediatricians, the pathologists, everyone describes how sadly Finley must have been in agony in the hours and days before his death.
For many, like neighbour Georgia Hubbard, news of Finley's death hit them hard.
I felt guilty if more than anything, I want to. Because I did hear things and I didn't say anything. He was just a baby. How could you do that to a baby? But I look at her. We weren't much older than her, really. How could you do that? You meant to protect them, not hurt them.
Well, the callousness of Stephen Bowden and Shannon Marsden's behaviour was laid bare throughout this trial. At one point, just hours after his own son's death, Stephen Bowden was overheard saying he was discussing putting Finley's pushchair on eBay to sell it. Well, afterwards, Derbyshire Police gave their reaction to the verdicts on the court steps.
It appears abundantly clear that their primary concern was their own freedom and not the life of Findlay. The injuries that were inflicted upon Findlay were amongst the worst I've seen in my 27-year policing career. And it's inconceivable to me how any parent could cause those devastating injuries to a child.
So could and should social workers have done more to protect Finlay? Well, that's now the subject of an independent local child safeguarding review. As for Bowden and Shannon Marsden, well, they'll be sentenced on May the 26th. They'll have plenty of time behind bars to contemplate their horrendous crimes, forever branded with the tag of baby killers.
Yes, a horrendous and heartbreaking case. Phil Brewster at Derby Crown Court, thank you. Next, 42 men have been jailed as part of a police investigation into child sexual abuse in Huddersfield. Operation Tender Sea focused on the historic abuse that girls faced in the city from 1995 and 2013. The men convicted so far have been sentenced to more than 500 years in jail between them. The most recent trial saw 5 men sentenced, 4 of which were found guilty of rape and 2 of trafficking. They were jailed for a combined 28 years at Bradford Crown Court.
A man who threw eggs at King Charles on a visit to York last year has been convicted of threatening behaviour.
Patrick Thelwell shouted an obscenity at the King after throwing at least 5 eggs towards His Majesty during a walkabout in the city in November.
Tom Barton has been at York Magistrates Court today. What happened, Tom?
Well, Patrick Thelwell did admit throwing those eggs at the King and the Queen Consort when they visited York back in November, but the 23-year-old who represented himself in court today had pleaded not guilty, claiming firstly that the court wasn't legitimate to try him because the case, like most criminal cases in this country, was being brought by and on behalf of the King, the Crown. He also insisted that his actions were necessary in the face of what he called tyrannical state violence. Now, the court was shown videos of Mr. Thelwell in the aftermath of the incident, including this footage from police body-worn cameras.
Did you throw something? I threw eggs at him because that's what you decided. It's the only justice the victims of colonialism will ever get. Did I get him? No. I didn't get him. So. Next time, someone will get him.
Well, Tom, you spoke to Thelwell afterwards. What did he have to say?
Well, he did admit in court today using low-level violence and shouting obscenities at the King, including claiming the King was a paedophile. Now, the senior district judge, Paul Goldspring, dismissed his arguments and found him guilty, sentencing him to 100 hours unpaid work. Speaking afterwards, Mr. Thelwell, well, he appeared to have been happy at least to have had his day in court.
I think the judge focused on the specifics of the case, which is like, did I throw an egg or not? And I never denied that I did. But, you know, at the same time, I also didn't apologise for it.
You say you want to change the world. Is throwing an egg at a man in his 70s really going to change the world?
Do you know, I hope that it sparks a conversation, and I hope that the conversation continues going forward.
Mr. Thelwell defiant today and refusing to say whether or not he would take similar action in similar circumstances in future.
Tom Barton in York. Thank you. More than 200 people have been forced from their homes after thieves targeted a block of flats in Bradford, allegedly stealing the entire length of electric cables which serve the whole building.
Residents at the City Exchange building are having to fork out thousands of pounds for hotels before their insurance claims pay out. It's left those with no spare money having to move in with friends or even sleep in cars. Helen Steele reports.
Newlyweds Adam and Suzanne Butler are staying in a hotel this week, but it's no honeymoon. With a prohibition notice served on their block of flats by West Yorkshire Fire Service, they don't know when they'll be allowed back.
It's scary because we don't know what's going to happen now. Of course, we have jobs, we need to commute. We just don't know what's going to happen now.
It's a fear of the unknown.
It was on Tuesday night that residents of the 120 flats here at City Exchange in Bradford were suddenly without power. Police believe thieves entered the sub-basement of the building, stealing more than 40 metres of cable. By 4 o'clock the next day, the building had to be evacuated, leaving everybody with just a few hours to find somewhere else to stay for the night and for the foreseeable future. Their property management company says insurance will pay up, just not yet.
People have been sleeping in their cars and everything.
Yeah, there was one person sleeping in the car. Like a few people have had to get transport on the train to go stay with family and stuff
friends.
like that. So it's not fair.
It's just adding to the homeless problem in Bradford as it is at the end of the day.
Fire crews say they've seen nothing on this scale before, and the alleged theft would have put many lives at risk.
Quite clearly it's dangerous in terms of working with electricity, but in terms of the residents that have left without power, without utilities in the first instance, so being able to look after themselves and their own welfare, but then the protection in the building, whether that's fire alarms, the sprinklers, and anything would alert them to a fire and help them to get out safely, has all been taken away.
Residents say there have been other issues with the building, this water leak caused by rainfall earlier this year. The management company says this is part of an ongoing insurance claim that it's working on. But this, added to this week's incident, has meant some tenants, like Robin Glasson, have had to move out 3 times in as many years, each time paying out initially for the hotel bill.
It's really putting my bank account to a point where I'm wondering how I'm going to afford food, how I'm going to afford to continue to pay these hotel bills.
But the scale of this incident means there are up to 250 people looking for local hotel rooms. You're in a situation now where you don't know where you're going to be living tonight.
That's right, yeah. So I mean, there's been a lot of bookings obviously in the hotels locally. The hotel I'm staying in have just basically said they wouldn't be able to put me up for a further night when I requested that this morning. So now I am looking at what my options are in terms of finding somewhere to sleep just for tonight.
This isn't a problem that will go away overnight though. With estimates it could be up to 2 weeks before the building is made safe. Helen Steele, ITV News in Bradford.
So Helen joins us now in the studio. Just listening to that report, it's clearly a very worrying time for the people that live there. What have those who manage the building actually said?
Well, the building is managed by MLM Property Management, and when I spoke with one of the directors, he said he hasn't seen anything like it in 30 years. He also said he was quite shocked that people could potentially do this and put their own lives at risk and those of the tenants. Now, as for the tenants' claims that the building had ongoing issues, the company says that it has done everything it could to make the building safe. They'd added extra locks to the doors and added extra doors recently.
And what happens then to the people who they can't afford, to pay the bills and their insurance hasn't paid out yet? What happens to them?
Well, MLM reiterated that the insurance companies would be paying out soon, but Bradford Council officers also said they had visited the building to offer any help to people who hadn't got alternative arrangements. They also invited people to contact their emergency out-of-hours line for any help they need in finding emergency accommodation tonight.
And any idea just how long it'll be before these people are back in their homes?
Well, originally they were told it could be a couple of days, but on further investigation, the fire hazards are such that it could be up to a couple of weeks before they're back home. So that's almost 250 people who face quite a long wait to get back home.
OK, Helen, thanks for bringing us up to speed. Thanks.
Yes, thank you. I'm sure we'll hear more about that in the future. Still to come before 6:30.
Allumage EAP, décollage.
We're blasting into the weekend with a space mission made possible with the help of some South Yorkshire scientists.
We're a small part of a much bigger team, but obviously, it's still very satisfying.
And it's been a wet end to the working week. Showers, longer spells of rain, really rather unsettled. The good news is, though, things are improving for the weekend. I'll have your forecast later in the programme.
Ross, thank you. Now, I'm sure there are plenty of us that can identify with this next story. It's those times when people have said things on social media and you just know they would never dare to say it in real life.
A bit like trolling, isn't it? Actually, there's a term for those people. They're known as casual critics. I've not heard that before. It's people who don't realise how hurtful their comments can actually be.
Well, they're now being targeted as part of a new campaign backed by a Sheffield mental health expert. Amrit Birdie explains.
It takes just seconds to post a comment online.
Was that really necessary?
And yet the impact can last much longer. A YouGov poll shows almost a third of UK adults aged over 16 have received some sort of negative comment online. The vast majority of those surveyed agreed that people say things online that they would never say in real life.
It's becoming more and more common, and there's no real kind of restrictions and stuff like that, so anyone can create an account and kind of post what they want.
I think we need to be a bit sensitive and a bit kind, and and try and be a bit mindful about how we might feel if we're on the receiving end of negative comments.
You don't know what that person is going through, or what their mental health is like, and it doesn't cost anything to be kind.
Robin Fletcher from mental health charity Sheffield Flourish says negative social media comments can be extremely harmful to our mental health.
The impacts can be really individual on people, so it can be anything from like depression, anxiety, social isolation. It can have effects on people's body image as well and how they feel about their body, and general isolation, I guess.
There are clear guidelines on social media sites when it comes to tackling sexism, homophobia, racism and other forms of hate speech. But what about those who post unkind comments and attempt to pass it off as banter or just a joke? These people are being called casual critics.
Now, why would you say that? It really is down to internet users to know what tools there are to show these people the door, which is what would happen in real life. Yes, you're free to say what you like, but in a situation, there may be consequences for what you say. So, yeah, be aware of the power that you do have as a citizen of the internet with your own space that's your own. What will you tolerate? Where's your line? And stick to that and adhere to it.
The Cybersmile Foundation is working with ITV on a campaign to get people to think twice about what they post. If you wouldn't say it, don't send it. Amrit Birdie, ITV News.
What sort of person says that?
Well, it's time for some sport now and a record-breaking deal in Women's Rugby League.
Zero Accounting Software sponsors ITV Regional Sports Report.
Holly May Dodd has made history today by becoming the first English woman to sign a professional rugby league deal in Australia. The 19-year-old York Valkyrie player will head down under to join the Canberra Raiders ahead of the new season, which starts next month. Valkyrie coach Lindsay Anfield called Dodd's move an absolutely massive moment for the game and for the player. Now the Snooker World Championships gets underway tomorrow. 16 of the game's best players will battle it out for the next 2 weeks, hoping to be crowned champion.
And we can let you into just a little secret. We already know one person who will be in the final. Sheffield's own referee, Brendan Moore. He'll be in charge of his final match before retiring.
Well, our sports reporter Arif Ahmed caught up with him a little earlier today.
Snooker has always been Brendan Moore's first love. He's come a long way from queuing outside the Crucible as a boy, hoping to catch a glimpse of the World Championships. Now, as a referee, he has the best seat in the house, and this year he's been chosen to take charge of his third final.
22. When I first started out, reffing at the Crucible itself's just a distant dream, never mind walking out to ref the final. To get one is brilliant, two, not many do two, but to get three, just to complete the hat-trick. Yeah, it's just the icing on the cake.
Brendan was once a bus driver whose route went past the Crucible every day. He only became a referee so he could learn the rules. And now, after 19 years of dedicated service, this year's final will be his last.
6. I mean, a footballer is like Wembley, tennis player, Wimbledon, the usual cliches. I can't think of any game bigger to go out on. I've gone as high as I can in the game. I love doing the job. I'm also an assessor for the referees, so I help coach referees along. So anybody else that comes on and does a world final, I'll be the first one to wish them luck, say congratulations. I'll be just as proud for them doing it as I am myself.
It'll be the first final without your father. You know, how emotional will that be? Because, you know, both of your love for snooker was massive, wasn't it?
Yeah, very. I've been saying it all week when I talk about it. I have to fight back. I could just feel it welling up now thinking about him. But this is the first world final without him there, because he's always been there. So yeah, that'll be quite emotional. But I know he's looking down, he'll be proud, as my mum. My mum will be watching TV, she'll be just as proud.
Having taken charge of some of the biggest matches, he's gained the respect from some of the game's biggest players, on and off the table.
Probably grown up with him for maybe the last 20 years now. So it's been a long time, but yeah, I know he's made the right decision for himself.
I'll still follow it closely. I'll still be in contact with a lot of the referees. So yeah, it won't go away. I'm leaving, but it'll never go away from me.
After racking up his first game in 2004, he's swapping snooker for pool. And next year, he'll be queuing up for the World Championships, just like old times. Arif Ahmed, ITV News, Sheffield.
Finally, have you ever thought whether there's life on Mars? What about life on Jupiter? Well, if you were watching last night, then you'll know that's the question we were asking yesterday.
Yeah, seems unlikely, but thanks in part to scientists from Sheffield. After a 24-hour delay, a space rocket is now well on its way to Jupiter, looking for just that, evidence of extraterrestrial life.
Well, here it is, taking off earlier today in South America.
Allumage Vulcain.
GMB's Laura Tobin was lucky enough to be there and told me what it was like to witness.
I just can't believe we witnessed history in the making, and I still am really, really emotional, and there's just, I think, disbelief because, of course, we had the postponement yesterday because of the severe weather conditions, but yeah, just over my shoulder, the sky lit up. We had our 3, 2, 1. And then you had this brilliant, bright yellow and orange flame from the rocket as it went up, and then these huge, big plumes of clouds as it flew off into the sky, and it moved up really slowly. It probably was really quick, but in my head it moved up really, really slowly. And then later you got this big boom from the sound wave that came towards you, and it just like this rumble in the sky, almost like a volcano or something had gone off. So, you know, it was like a multi-sensory overload, and I still can't believe it happened. And, you know, now it's on this massive 8-year-long mission to Jupiter, and we were here, you know, the only people from the UK to witness it with my own eyes. I haven't got the words.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable, isn't it?
It really is. And I just think it's just so great for Europe. This is the first time Europe have been able to launch a rocket all the way to Jupiter. Huge collaborations from many countries right across Europe. Thousands of scientists doing some really cool things.
Well, Laura, we've been lucky enough to catch up with Dr. Simon Pope from Sheffield University to see what he says about this amazing mission.
You don't always expect those things to be going on, you know, in Yorkshire. Yeah, it's a complex mission. It's a lot of people involved. So it's, you know, we're a small part of a much bigger team, but obviously, yeah, it's still very satisfying. We're not likely to find direct signs of life. If we do get indications of life, it's going to be very simple life, you know, cellular form. It's not going to be the life we see in films, unfortunately. But it's good to know that, you know, we're not the only planet if that's the case.
And Sheffield scientists have played a key role in this, haven't they?
Yes, exactly. There are 10 instruments on board, and the instrument that was developed from the University of Sheffield is the radio and plasma wave instrument, and it looks at the electromagnetic fields of the planet Jupiter and also of the 3 icy moons. There is so much data that they're going to gather. So the exciting thing that happened there was they've figured out a way to compress the data to make it easier to send back to Earth so we get as much data as possible. I just think, yay for science.
Absolutely. Well, Laura, thank you very much. We'll let you come back down to earth now.
Thankfully, I didn't stow away, so I'm still here to tell the tale.
Incredible. Here's Ross now with weather for us Earthlings.
Good visibility on the horizon. TUI sponsors ITV Yorkshire Weather.
Hello, good evening. We have seen some very heavy showers across much of the region today. Some thunder, some hail in the mix. The good news is, though, it is calming down. As we make our way overnight, the rain, the showers disappearing. A brighter day tomorrow. Still a few showers dotted around, but with more in the way of sunshine, things calming down. Temperatures will start to climb as we make our way through the next few days. Low pressure nearby at the moment, keeping things unstable, allowing those showers to bubble up. But through Saturday into Sunday, it's high pressure taking over, calming things down, keeping at bay the wet and windy weather in the west. And again, for us, it does mean a lot more in the way of brighter breaks. For now then, as we head through the rest of this evening and overnight, the showers, the patchy rain continue until the early hours. Still quite a bit of cloud left behind, and the benefit of that is where we do see that cloud cover. Temperatures holding up, not quite as chilly as we've had over the last couple of nights, but still dropping down to around 4 or 5 degrees. First thing on Saturday morning, still quite a bit of cloud around, some murkier conditions certainly over higher ground, but you can see here the cloud a bit more willing to thin and break, certainly as we make our way into the afternoon. As the temperatures climb though, we are seeing those showers appearing. Not as frequent as we've seen today, still sometimes on the heavy side and slow moving, but also plenty of sunshine. The showers far more hit and miss, highs of a mild 14 degrees. Through the later part of Saturday and into Sunday, with high pressure now in control, it is calming down, clearer skies for the most part as we make our way through Sunday morning. And although cloud amounts will vary with those brighter breaks, highs of around 16 degrees. Plenty of sunny spells staying mostly dry as we head through next week as well. Have a good weekend.
TUI sponsors ITV Yorkshire Weather.
Lovely, thank you, Ross. Well, the weekend starts now, doesn't it?
Yeah, the weather down here on Earth doesn't look bad, does it?
Yeah, it's pretty good.
That's it for now. I'm back at 10:30. Lucrezia's next. See you later on.
Bye, have a great weekend.